I am Kelsey Grant, and I am 29 years old. Christmas Eve was supposed to be the night my family found out they were finally getting a grandchild. Instead, it turned into the night my own father looked me straight in the eye across the dinner table and erased me from his life with one sentence. The house was full of polished silverware, expensive wine, and fake smiles. I waited until everyone had taken a bite of prime rib, set my fork down, and said as calmly as I could, "I am pregnant." For half a second, no one moved. My mother's hand froze around her glass. My sister stared at me like she was watching a movie. My father leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight, his eyes cold in a way I had never seen before. He did not ask who the father was. He did not ask if I was happy or healthy. He did not ask anything. He just said a few quiet, careful words about my baby that I will not repeat here. Then he added, "You are not part of this family anymore. You are out of the will." That was it. Years of doing everything right, wiped out between the main course and dessert. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stared at the table. I did not scream. I reached under my chair, took the small, perfectly wrapped present I had brought for him, and set it in the middle of the table. Then I pushed back my chair, wished everyone a Merry Christmas, and walked out of that house. I sat in my car, watching the Greenwich fog crawl across the windshield like a cold, gray shroud. I did not cry. Crying is a luxury for people who still have something to lose. I took out my phone and opened the Miller family office portal. For 10 years, I was the silent architect, the chief financial officer who fixed the tax messes Julian created while he was busy blowing thousands of dollars in Vegas. My father loved his legacy, but he forgot who actually poured the concrete for the foundation. I navigated to the Spendthrift Trust settings. With 3 steady taps, I flagged Julian's primary account for a suspicious activity report. It was not magic. It was a standard 48-hour internal audit freeze. I knew Julian was drowning in debt. By freezing that account, I was not just taking his money, I was taking away his oxygen. A moment later, my screen lit up with a text from my mother, Celeste, calling me ungrateful. I stared at the words until they blurred. They thought I was the help because I did not brag. They forgot I built the very walls they are currently hiding in. They broke me back then. But today, I am the one holding the hammer. Julian, now panicked by the account freeze and his own secret $200,000 gambling debt, decided to go for the throat. He sent a formal moral turpitude notice to my employer, claiming I was a risk to the firm's reputation. He was trying to trigger a clause in our grandmother's trust that would disinherit me completely if I were ever involved in scandalous conduct. I met my lawyer, Mary Ann, in a dimly lit corner of a downtown hotel. She handed me a stack of land deeds. That is when we found it. Julian had been using the very property held in my name within the trust as collateral for his private bridge loans. It was the inheritance burn. He was not just a bad brother. He was a predator feeding off my future. I told Mary Ann to let him think his plan was working. I wanted him so confident that he did not see the federal trap he was walking into. They thought they were the ones in power. But I was the one who controlled the paperwork. I watched Julian like a hawk at the next family brunch. He was riding high, fueled by expensive champagne and the belief that his plan to disinherit me was a slam dunk. When he got up to brag to an investor, he left his physical security token sitting right next to his half-eaten lobster. I did not touch it. I just leaned over and took a high-resolution photo of the serial number on the back of the token. Within 10 minutes, I had sent that photo to Sterling, Julian's thirsty young associate. I sent Sterling a confidential headhunter opportunity from a dummy account. He was so desperate to escape Julian's shadow that he opened the attachment on the firm's secure network. One click was all I needed. A moment later, the truth flashed on my screen. Julian had been funneling money from the firm's client escrow accounts to cover his tracks. I was looking at a mirror of every illegal transfer and every cent he had stolen. They thought I was a liability, but they were about to find out that Julian was a liability to the federal government. The hearing was a calculated trap. Julian was standing at the lectern, performing for the board members and the observers from the Vanguard group. He looked at me with pure disgust and called me a lower-class distraction. I sat there, completely still. I waited until Julian reached his peak the moment he promised the board that his unwavering integrity was the firm's greatest asset. I hit enter. It triggered an accidental $500,000 wire from a high-risk offshore shell company I had set up weeks ago, straight into Julian's personal escrow account. The wire came from an offshore red flag source and triggered a Financial Crimes Enforcement Network alert instantly. The doors swung open. It was a federal marshal. Julian's face went the color of wet ash. He realized too late that by accepting that money to cover his debt, he had just signed his own federal warrant. The $100 million merger died right there on the hearing room floor. Julian was let out in heavy iron cuffs. Sterling had already signed an immunity deal and vanished to Maine, leaving Julian to drown alone. I invoked the trust's scandal clause and effectively evicted my parents from the Greenwich estate. I walked toward the courthouse parking garage, the air finally feeling clear. My mother, Celeste, was waiting in the shadows with a silver letter opener, screaming that I had destroyed the family name. I did not flinch. I just pointed to the high-definition 4K security camera blinking directly above us. I told her to go ahead and make the federal trial even easier for the prosecutor. She stopped. The letter opener clattered onto the concrete. I got into my car and drove away as the police arrived to seal the Miller estate. My past was under yellow tape, and my future was wide open. The judge sentenced Julian to 12 years in federal prison for wire fraud and interstate money laundering, with eligibility for parole only after 10 years. The court also ordered a massive restitution of $342,000. My father was stripped of his board seats and is currently facing a civil suit for negligence. They lost the Greenwich estate and are living in a rented 2-bedroom condo. I spend my mornings watching the tide come in with my daughter. She is 4 months old, and her world is filled with laughter, not legacies. I realize that blood does not make you family. Loyalty does. If you share a last name with people who treat you like a spare part, you are allowed to walk away. True revenge is not loud, it is the steady, silent withdrawal of the foundation you provided. When you stop holding them up, they have no choice but to fall. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You're asking, why did she wait 10 years? Or why did she ever fix Julian's messes in the first place? It's easy to judge from the outside. But when you are in the thick of a toxic family dynamic, logic usually takes a backseat to survival. Let's look at the psychology of this mess. Aria wasn't being weak. She was trapped in what we call the slot machine effect, or intermittent reinforcement. Toxic families like the Millers operate exactly like a casino. Most of the time, they treat you like garbage. But every once in a while, they give you a win, a small compliment, or a seat at the Christmas table. You start addicted to those crumbs, hoping that if you just work a little harder, the jackpot of real love will finally hit. Aria didn't stay because she was a fool. She stayed because she was waiting for a payout that was never going to come. Now let's talk about financial self-defense. Aria's win didn't come from her emotions. It came from her strategic execution. Move 1. The audit strategy. Scammers, even the ones who share your last name, absolutely hate details. By flagging the suspicious activity report, she forced the shark into shallow water. Move 2. Building the case. Aria didn't go to the police with feelings. She went with a digital mirror of Julian's escrow records. Finally, the FinCEN trigger. She invested $500,000 of her own liquid capital to bait a trap that she knew would trigger a federal response. She didn't just want an apology. She wanted a permanent, legal severance. Your value is not a brand liability just because a narcissist says so. Aria had to burn down the Miller dynasty to realize she was the one who built the bricks in the first place. If you've ever been the spare in your family's Game of Thrones, tell us how you broke the cycle in the comments. We're building a community of survivors here. Subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of the win. Stay smart, stay documented, and remember, loyalty is earned, never owed. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are asking, why did she wait 10 years to walk away? Or, why did she spend a single minute fixing Julian's messes? It is easy to shout at the protagonist from the safety of your living room. But when you are trapped in a family dynamic this toxic, your brain is not operating on logic, it is operating on survival. Let's look at the psychological decoder of this mess. Kelsey was not being weak. She was trapped in what we call the slot machine effect. In psychology, this is known as intermittent reinforcement. Toxic families like the Millers operate exactly like a casino. Most of the time, the machine takes your money and gives you nothing but cold silence. But every once in a while, it pays out a tiny prize, a seat at the holiday table, a rare nod of approval, or a fake smile. You become addicted to those crumbs of hope. You keep playing, keep fixing their tax disasters, and keep funding their lifestyle because your brain is convinced that if you just pull the lever one more time, you will finally hit the jackpot of unconditional love. Spoiler alert, the house always wins, and that jackpot does not exist. Now, let's get into the street-smart financial analysis. Kelsey finally won because she stopped playing the family game and started playing the compliance game. First, look at the audit strategy. Scammers, even the ones who share your DNA, absolutely hate details. By flagging the suspicious activity report, Kelsey forced Julian out of the shadows and into the light of professional scrutiny. If you suspect you are being drained, stop arguing and start documenting. Second, notice how she handled the buyout. She did not just take her money and run. She used $500,000 of her own capital to bait a trap. In the world of high-stakes drama and real-life litigation, sometimes you have to invest in your freedom. She did not want a messy family court battle. She wanted a clean, permanent, federal severance. Finally, building the case. She did not go to the authorities with feelings. She went with a digital mirror of Julian's escrow records. She understood that while blood might be thicker than water, a certified paper trail is thicker than both. The verdict is this: your self-worth is not a brand liability just because a narcissist says so. You are not the spare in someone else's story. You are the architect of your own. Kelsey had to burn down the dynasty to realize she was the one who manufactured every single brick in that building. If you have ever been the black sheep or the spare in your family's Game of Thrones, tell us how you broke the cycle in the comments. We are building a community of survivors here. Subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of the win. Stay smart, stay documented, and remember, loyalty is earned, never owed.